housing unit, 3-story with 59 units at the corner of Cummer Avenue and Willowdale. So we'll turn to the next slide, please, and we'll get started. I want to remind folks that this meeting is being recorded and it will be available on the website following the meeting. We'll start off with a land acknowledgement, and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's reports and recommendation is that land acknowledgements are a good way for us to start down the road of reconciliation. So we acknowledge that the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto was covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Next slide. So for those of you joining us tonight, we have almost 60 in the room now. If you're on a smartphone, tap the participant panel button at the top right of the screen, then tap raise hand at the bottom right of the screen when we get to the Q&A portion, and we'll bring this slide up again just before the Q&A portion. For those on tablets or computers, tap the participants button at the bottom, panel button at the bottom, then tap the raise hand button at the very bottom right. You'll see a little emoji with a hand there for you. For those on the phone, and we have a few people on the phone with us tonight, you'll be pressing *3 to raise your hand, and then we will be able to unmute you, or if we have difficulty with that, we will be pressing *6 to unmute your microphone on your phone when we get to that point of the meeting for the Q&A. And just want to also remind everyone, as people are still signing in, we're at 64 now. It continues to grow as people continue to sign in. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on the website following the meeting. So tonight's agenda is welcome and introduce panelists. We'll do that shortly and review the agenda, which we're doing now. We want to have concise questions and answers and constructive and considerate of each other's views tonight. We want to make sure that this is a constructive meeting and we maintain a manner of being safe for all points of view here. This, of course, is a meeting about 175 Cummer Avenue and the project updates. There will be a presentation from the neighborhood group, TNG and Coda Health, who are the folks involved in the Phase 1 housing providers, and they're going to provide us with how things are going with the Phase 1 and what's been happening there. And then we have a long time in this meeting. This meeting will adjourn at 8 o'clock, and we have lots of time for your questions and comments. And then we'll have a wrap up just before 8 o'clock. So that's the agenda for tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. So I want to introduce the panel who is here with us tonight. We have from the Housing Secretariat, Abby Bond, the Executive Director of the Housing Secretariat. There's Abby. From the Neighborhood Group, we have Kagan Harris, Director of Housing and Development. And from Coda Health, we have Lynn Saleh, who's the Director of Community Health Services. We have a number of other city staff who are also on the panel who will be able to answer your questions if it's directed to them regarding different topics that we may require their resource to be able to help answer the questions. So there's a number of other city staff, and they'll introduce themselves during the question and answer if they get to the point where they're answering a question or providing comments. Next slide. So typically, we do have a ground rule slide, but what I want to talk about is encouraging healthy discussion tonight. We want people to be respectful of all the participants and the panelists. And as Mayor Tory said last time in the last meeting that was held, please do not stigmatize the people who are trying to assist here. This is an important role for the city to take care of those who have found that they're without housing. Please be concise, constructive, and considerate of others' views. Ask that you ask the question at the start of your comments if you can, so that whoever the questions go to can think about their answer. And we'd like to limit it to 2 minutes per person because we do have almost 75 in the room now, and we want to make sure we get to as many questions and comments as many people as possible. And we'd also ask the panel also to be brief with their answers so that we can make sure we get through as many questions as possible. So discrimination or abusive language of any kind will not be tolerated and will be a result of a warning by me, followed by removal from the event if this continues. We're looking for a civil conversation tonight that allows for a safe virtual situation for all points of view in this virtual meeting tonight. And there are a number of policy guidelines for the discrimination, including for sex or for many different topics. And I think you all know what we're talking about when we're talking about discrimination or harassment or abusive language. So I'm asking you to please mind these ground rules, and as the facilitator, I'll be making sure that we stay in line with this set of ground rules for the meeting. So of course, this is the community meeting number 3, and this is the purpose of this meeting tonight is to share updates on the project as of August of this month, share information about the supportive services provided and how these housing programs are operating, a presentation by supportive housing providers in recently opened modular buildings at 11 Macy and 321 Dover Court. And then we're here to answer any community questions you may have at this stage of the program. So with that, we'll turn it over to Abby Bond, and she will take us through the beginning part of the presentation, and Kagan and his colleagues will also have part of the presentation. So Abby Bond will start with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jim, and thanks to everyone who's come tonight. So we just have a few slides to run through before we can get to the question and answer sessions. I think it's important for us to start with, again, some information about why we're trying to do this project here in this neighborhood, why we're trying to increase the supply of supportive housing across the city. You can see that we're doing this all over the city. We're leading around 12 supportive housing projects right now, which are in 11 different wards. And this is really because we continue to see a crisis around homelessness and real pressures in our housing system. And so we urgently need to provide more housing for people so people can come inside and have a safe, permanent, affordable home with supports to be successful. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of this particular project, so a little bit of an update since I think we had our last meeting. So on June the 8th, City Council approved a staff report that requested the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to make a Minister zoning order to permit the development of this project here at Cummer Avenue, and directed staff to begin the process of selecting an operator for this new site. And so then on July the 14th, we began some of the construction works on the site, but which didn't require the issuance of the ministerial zoning order. And then subject to the issuance of that zoning order, you would then see fencing be erected around the site, and in addition, some construction equipment would be mobilized and a water line relocated. And this will be followed by the start of any excavation work. Okay, next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight for you a number of improvements that have been made to the project based on feedback from the community. And we're really working through these through the site plan process. So they include a reduction in the number of units. So originally we proposed 64, and that has been reduced to 59. We've also seen an increase in the indoor amenity area, notably in the dining room, lounge, and tenant support areas. We've also seen revisions to the infrastructure placement so that we can preserve as many trees as possible. We've also seen improvements to outdoor space through additional landscaping and lighting, the relocation of waste storage inside the building, and the introduction of a mural. We've also seen improved landscape design that include modifications that situate some of the preserved trees and the additional landscaping and benches on the outside of the fence line for the residents who live at Willowdale Manor. We've also seen or made enhancements to the building design through improved building cladding, additional cedar cladding, window coverings, and bird-friendly window glazing. And we've also identified staff parking spaces for the modular housing building, as well as a dedicated off-street Wheels-Trans bus stop. Okay, next slide. So this slide, we wanted to give you an update about the Community Liaison Committee. So we opened applications to the community for those people who wanted to join the Community Liaison Committee, and we've received applications, and a CLC will be established later in the fall when an operator is selected. The real purpose for this committee is so that we can facilitate further information sharing and dialogue, similar to what we're doing tonight, but really building on and maintaining that positive relationship with the city, the housing provider, and the neighbours for this building. And the committee will have seats for representatives of neighbouring businesses, residents association, and neighbours. Next slide, please. So here is a bit of a timeline about where we are in the process, holding our third community meeting for this site. And throughout this process, we've engaged in a number of other outreaches to residents of Willowdale Manor. We've also had our community liaison accessible by email and phone. And we've also provided an opportunity for residents to speak directly to council members at Planning and Housing Committee. So we're here today with some updates for you, and also some kind of special guests, if you like. So I'll be talking about that in a minute, but this really is about continuing that dialogue with you so that we can make this project successful. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit about, again, what supportive housing is and what we're doing at this particular site. So there will be a range of support services provided on site, and our operator will be selected through an RFP process, and that process is really designed to get the best operator, one with a strong track record of delivering these kinds of service elsewhere in other buildings. Some core services would include 24/7 staffing on site, a focus on ensuring people maintain their housing and preventing eviction, support to access or gain mental health or substance use support if needed, connection to primary care, also harm reduction if needed, as well as other kinds of support with daily living, maybe reconnection to family and friends, food support, and connection to other types of community supports that may exist, for example, like volunteer employment opportunities and access to income assistance program. And so in the next group of slides, I'm going to introduce you, or Keegan's going to introduce himself. I'm going to hand over to Keegan Harris from the neighborhood group, and also Lynn Sally from COTA. And they're going to share with you some of their experience from the first two modular housing buildings that we delivered at Dovercourt and Macy Avenue. So I just want to be clear that the neighborhood group and COTA Health are not proposed to be the operators for these buildings, and we're going to run, a full RFP process for that. But they do have some really good experience in the first two buildings, and certainly when they came to one of the meetings we held for Trenton, it was very well received by the community to hear from them directly about their experiences and some of their learning. So we thought it would be useful for them tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Keegan at this point, and he can take you through his slides. So over to you, Keegan.
Thanks so much, everyone. Hi, thanks so much for having me. As Abby mentioned, my name is Keegan Harris. I'm the Director of Housing Development with the Neighborhood Group. The Neighborhood Group is a community service organization. We have well over 100-year history of providing supports and services for various members of the community, but we also have well over 30 years of providing supportive housing to just a variety of groups of individuals, from people experiencing homelessness to seniors to everyone else in between. We're also joined by, I'll pass it over quickly to Lynn Sally from COTA.
Hello there, my name is Lynn Sally. I'm a Director of Community Health Services, supporting the operations of both Macy Avenue and Dovercourt Street for the Phase 1 projects. We provide the support there 24/7.
So it's a really unique situation where the neighborhood group provides property management and oversight of the building itself, and Lynn and her team at COTA provide the support services on site. So an overview of each site, at 11 Macy, there's a 56-unit building. It's opened in December 2020. As of today, there are 47 residents. We're expecting to have full occupancy by September, and there is support staff on site 24 hours a day. Next slide, please. at Dovercourt Road at 321 Dovercourt. It's a 44-unit building. It opened in February 2021. As of today, there are 39 residents who have moved in. We expect full occupancy by September. And as well, like Macy, there's full support staff on site for 24 hours. Next slide, please. So Lynn's going to provide a kind of a breakdown of these next few slides that goes more into the tenant selection and application process, as well as some of the support services on site.
Thanks, Kagan. So we wanted to give you some information about our application and selection process at CODA and the neighborhood group. We have a very robust and thorough process for selection. Every applicant is unique, and at CODA we gather a full picture of the client, the applicant, to understand more about their needs, their successes, and their challenges. We start with a housing interview, which may involve their supports that are in the client's life. The applicant must have goals and insight and be able to demonstrate that they can live and function independently in their own unit in the community. They must want to work with us and receive support services. This is very key to their acceptance to our program. We also consider the safety of residents and staff as a key consideration in accepting applicants to our modular housing program. And just to note, not all applicants who apply are accepted to modular housing. And if not, they're matched to other programs or services in CODA that can provide support and housing, or we go external. Every tenant signs a lease with the neighborhood group once we mutually decided to accept them. And in doing so, they must adhere to responsibilities that are outlined in the lease. Next slide. Just to give you an overview of the supports on site, this shows, it might be small for some folks, but just to show you, this provides an overview of the support ratio. We have a very high ratio of tenants to support staff on site. At Macy Avenue, we have 56 residents and 5 to 6 staff working in the days and evenings, 3 overnight, and 1 security person who provides hourly walkabouts of the building inside and out from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. The ratio during the daytime is 1 to 9, so 1 staff to 9 residents. So quite high when you're thinking about supportive housing. 1 to 11 ratio in the evenings and mornings, and 1 to 14 ratio overnight. Very similar picture at our 321 Dovercourt site. Just because there's fewer residents, there's 44 residents, it's slightly smaller with 4 to 5 staff on during the day. Next slide. A little bit about our level of support. We have an array of support and services offered on site, including medical support. We have nurses that come in and see the clients and or the residents as needed. We provide personal support to residents as needed, and mostly for those residents who have mobility issues, maybe confined to wheelchairs or walkers. We have as well housing support workers with an extensive background working in the field. We also store medication on site, and we work with residents and their doctors and pharmacists. We provide skill teaching such as cooking, shopping for groceries, resume writing, employment searches. We offer, of course, the subsidized housing piece, which is key, helping tenants with the support and easing the burden of the costly rent in the city. We offer an optional meal program, which has been excellent, which has been well received. It's about $6 a day for 3 meals, which is amazing and unheard of these days. And also we provide social rec opportunities on site and also in the community. Next slide. Great. So we work towards eviction prevention and housing stability. That's very important. But having a place to land is really important for the people that we work with, the tenants, because they've lived precariously for quite some time. Each resident has a unique recovery plan and a personal support plan in place. We have support for the clients, crisis support provided. We provide assistance with medication, as we discussed, and safe storage in our medication room. And that's not for every tenant, but as needed. And we provide support and counseling, relapse prevention, and related to addictions as needed. Rent collection and rent arrears, we work with the neighborhood group. We work in tandem, CODA and TNG, with each resident. We ensure that we are connected to community sports through community health centers, etc., to make sure we're working collaboratively with primary care physicians, and develop and maintain medical supports in the community. Also working with volunteer agencies and employment agencies, and of course, income support assistance or income assistance programs such as Ontario Works. Next slide.
So this encompasses more with T&G's role on site. So we have maintenance staff on site during regular weekday hours, and we've also have maintenance staff on site during the weekend as well. There's a property manager that oversees both sites, as well as a housing administration staff that works at both sites. There's emergency answering service for residents during off hours. To be noted, this emergency answering service is only for property management issues. So if, say, a pipe bursts or there's an issue with a toilet or something like that, at any time they can contact this number and they'll get a hold of the on-call supervisor, and then they will send somebody to go deal with the issue. If there's another kind of emergency, CODA staff are on site every 24 hours a day. We have 3 cooks for each site, 2 during the week and 1 during the weekend, and they provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner for residents in the meal program. And then we also have free laundry services. This week, we also started a resident-led advisory committee where residents they provide insight and guidance to how the operation of the building goes in terms of what menu planning could be done, what kind of work can be done on site, so forth and so forth. We're creating a peer employment program. We're providing free Wi-Fi for the residents. So there's a lot of really exciting things happening on each site. Next slide, please.
This is a bit more about our support delivery model, but just sort of to give a picture that the tenant is at the center and COTA, T&G, the community, and modular housing residents all work together. It's quite a community, and very amazing to see the recovery that's happening in place and all the supports we provide: social groups, recreation, support with meals, as we mentioned, housing stability, harm reduction as needed, medication support. It really is a fantastic service and support being offered.
So we have a very close relationship with the police in both neighborhoods. We think it's really important to maintain an open dialogue and communication with our colleagues in the police. And what we've been hearing from both the police as well as from what we're seeing in the stats since the opening of each site is there has been no negative impact since the opening of both modular housing sites in their communities. In fact, in categories like breaking and entry and so forth, crime has gone down in several of those categories. We want to caution and remind people that when you look at crime stats, it's very much in flux. There's a lot of different socioeconomic factors that play into it, but ultimately what we've been able to see from the data, because it is something we track very closely because community safety is very important to us, is we've seen no negative impact. Next slide. Now, there's been a lot of community support for both sites. In fact, one resident by themselves raised over $1,300 in gift cards for the members of the Dovercourt house as just kind of like welcome gift cards to all residents, which was really exciting, and the residents were so happy and excited to get from that. We get a continuous stream of donations from various communities members in the Macy neighborhood. They're now focusing on providing knitting projects as well as different books and hobbies activities because they've provided so many clothes. There's been so many welcome packages received. Little Portugal and Dundas BIA, they coordinated a donation of PPE for residents who are moving into their new homes. On May 22nd, there was the community members of Dovercourt organized a massive donation drive that took place, and as a result, we received so many donations that we had to put a pause on donations. I mean, we had our community room as well as another apartment full with clothes, activities. It was just, and there was at least 50 to 60 people who came out that day, just a continuous stream of people dropping stuff off. I still get emails from people asking if they can come and drop stuff off based on how successful that donation drive was. And then once, in the post-COVID world, we're looking at doing neighborhood cleanups with both residents and community members, walking tours, a bike donation drive, as well as establishing community gardens. Next slide. So this was a quote from a community member who was initially very opposed to the project and became involved with the Community Liaison Committee as a way to kind of support and become engaged. And they were very interested in ensuring that this information was shared at meetings like this. And their quote is, "Last summer, I vehemently opposed the introduction of modular housing to my already dense community. The building design does fit into the neighborhood, and when the landscaping is completed, it should look quite nice. I joined the community liaison and outreach committees as I wanted to maintain communication with the city in case there were problems with 11 Macy. We meet via Zoom once a month, and so far I've been glad of the interaction, as it helps to build understanding. So far, there have been no adverse interactions between 11 Macy and the community that I know of." Next slide. And that's it for TNG's and CODA's presentation. Thanks so much for having us, and thanks so much for listening. Jim, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. The mute buttons are always hard to connect off and on when you change. So thanks for joining us, and we have 107 people in the virtual room right now, and there's two ways for you to ask questions, and they'll be answered by the panel. There's you can put your hand up in the positions for doing that is on smartphones. Tap the participants panel button at the top right of the screen, then tap raise hand at the bottom right of the screen, and then you will see your hand in the queue. For tablets or computers, you can tap the participants panel button at the bottom of the screen, then tap the raise hand button at the bottom right. It's a little emoji that looks like a hand. There's 4 or 5 people on the phone here. So for those on the phone, we're not going to exclude you. You certainly can participate. Press *3 on your phone to raise your hand, and then we can unmute you, or we can ask you to press *6 to unmute your microphone if we have trouble unmuting you. Next slide, please. Before we get to the questions and comments, I just also wanted to say that I missed a very important person who's attending tonight. The counselor's office has staff here to listen and take notes. And of course, we've had the previous meetings on March 9th and April 6th. And also the Councillor Fillion's office held additional consultation meetings on design with a number of stakeholders and others. So there's been a lot of consultation on this. This meeting tonight purpose is to answer any additional questions and update meeting, questions and comments you may have. Please be concise, constructive, and considerate of your views. And to allow more questions, please limit your comment or question to 2 minutes per person, please. So I see that, let's start with a live question. So we have Lucy first up. I'm going to unmute you, Lucy, and you can go ahead with your question. So Lucy, you're live now. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. I just have a question. So what is the reason behind placing this modular support housing in front of the rehab and the senior housing home, whereas the other ones were at empty sites near close major intersection roads and like Macy and Dalton Court, because that just doesn't really make any sense because access is pretty bad over here.
Okay, thanks for that question, Lucy. And I'll turn that over to Abby to answer that question.
Yeah, so as part of our efforts to open supportive housing across the city, we looked at many sites, really looking for the right kind of site from a practical basis, the size of the site, whether the site was flat, access to utilities, as well as other types of services. And so we felt that this site can work really well. It's a good site in a neighborhood where people can make their home. So like I said, we looked at many sites across the city, and we do feel like the site can be successful.
That's a really generic answer though, because in reality, the bus lines here don't really work. You're crowding it into basically someone's front lawn. And then at the same time, I don't know what it looks like, but I look at the plan of this place, this neighborhood, and it looks like you guys are creating an island out of vulnerable people. And the closest grocery store is a hike. So if you're really putting all of them together with meal plans and everything, they're basically not having any chance to really be incorporating, having like the workforce that you're talking about. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up.
Okay, thanks, Lucy, for pointing that out. And next, with a hand up on the queue, I have Frank Mara. So, Frank, I'm going to unmute you, and you can go ahead with your question. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, I want to address the elephant in the room. This meeting has been called on short order because of an email from the councillor saying that the province has thus far refused the MZO. The information has already been presented that construction will proceed apace, which ordinarily would not be permitted without that. Can we in fact get true clarity on the matter of the MZO? Is it in fact, as the councillor says, been deferred pending this meeting and further review, or is it in fact been approved?
And Lynn will get you to answer that. Sorry, Abby will get you to answer that.
Yeah, so the City of Toronto has requested an MZO for this site, but we have not received it. And so any work that we've done to the site to prepare for construction is work that we're able to do without receiving the MZO.
Okay, great. Next on the queue, we have Junyan Shai. So, Junyan, I'm going to unmute you. Please go ahead with your question.
Hey, thank you for this opportunity. So I attended several of those meetings before. My opinion hasn't changed. I feel this site is really inappropriate. Other than the size, is a good size. So this is not a parking lot or abandoned building that can be torn down. It's a green space that is very precious for the people around, for the seniors in the nursing home and the senior residents. And we see it every day. They have their activities there. They have their morning exercise there, their afternoon tea there on the green grass. So now that's going to be gone. So this does have huge impact on their quality of life. So as a community member, we know. And secondly, the people, there are about over 300 people, residents in the nursing home, another 300 in the seniors building, the Willowdale Manor, and those people are extremely vulnerable. So all those make this site very different from the other sites that you have already been approved to use as the location for those modular homes. And I cannot be convinced that, especially like young male adults moving from shelters, I know they're not criminals. I'm not saying they have their own issues, but I have worked downtown. I have worked close to many of those shelter places. And really, I cannot be convinced that it's all peaceful around those areas. And I'm a healthcare worker myself. I have worked with seniors who live in supportive housing. I have heard them telling me the story how they are frightened when they're, people, young adults, placed around their living area. So I feel this site selection is really inappropriate for all these reasons. The vulnerability of the local population, and plus it's a green space that really affect the quality of the life of the people here. And also why the city, we know the people from shelter have very different care needs compared to the people in the nursing homes. Why put the people together when they have very different care needs? It's not an efficient way to manage our healthcare system.
So, Junyan, do you have a question in that, or is that it's primarily a comment I've heard so far? And I want to remind you that we're taking notes as well as recording the meeting. So all this commentary questions will be included in a report that we added to the website. So did you have a question, Junyan, or just wanted to make the comment that you felt this was an appropriate site?
Okay, so the question is, are there other alternative sites that instead of this one?
So I'll turn that to Abby. There was a site selection process, so Abby will talk about that.
Yeah, so as I said, we did look at many sites across the city, and we are still looking actually, because we are looking at a second round of Rapid Housing Initiative funding from the federal government, through which we received federal funding for this project. So we're still looking for other sites, but as I said, we looked at the our selection criteria and did select this site as being appropriate. I will also just say from a planning perspective that we don't zone for people. So this is a residential apartment building, and as such, we don't kind of exclude sites on the basis of the type of people who would be living there.
Okay,
Thanks, Jim.
thank you. Thank you, Abby. We'll go to one more question from the live hands up, and then I think there are some questions from the Q&A, and I'll turn to my colleague, Liz McCarty, who will provide those questions to the panel. So the next in the queue, we have Jim Delane, and Jim, I'm going to unmute you, and you can go ahead with your question or comment.
Thanks very much. My name is Jim Delane. I'm, among other things, I'm president of Nuktuk nonprofit Homes, which operates Pearson Place, which is the 53-unit affordable housing project at Cummer and Yonge. I'm also a longtime member of Cummer Avenue United Church and a member of the executive board. And I've also, with my wife, been a resident of Willowdale now for more than 4 decades. So I just offer a comment. Basically, I fully support the project. I believe that all of the legitimate concerns that have been raised, and we've heard some tonight, and we've seen in the presentation, I think, that those concerns either have been addressed or will be addressed. I'm really dismayed at the amount of misinformation that seems to be circulating. And particularly, I guess, dismayed that the province has chosen to defer meeting such an important housing need through an MZO when all the other housing requests that it gets for MZOs seem to get approved fairly readily. So I only offer this as a measure of support, and to say that when Pearson Place was being developed, which was more than 20 years ago now, we heard many of the same concerns: crime, garbage, neighbors being threatened. All of those things were talked about at the time, and none of that has happened. The building is a model of efficiency. It's always clean. People that live there are residents of Willowdale. There are 53 families, Willowdale families, living in that building. And so I just urge people to keep an open mind in this and really considering supporting the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for those comments. It's nice to hear that we have all viewpoints represented tonight. And as we started off the meeting, we want to create a civil conversation and a place for people to provide all different viewpoints and comments on this project. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Liz McCarty, who has been monitoring the Q&As. So once again, you can raise your hand or you can type a question into the Q&A box at the bottom of your participants tab, and we'll be able to get to as many as questions. After 7, we still have until 8 o'clock, so there's lots of time for questions. So we'll turn it over to Liz for some questions from the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so this is a question for Lynn, reoperations in your presentation. So Lynn, why is the ratio of staff to clients so high? What kinds of needs do these tenants have that would be different than, for example, other affordable housing like Willowdale Manor? So Lynn, that is a question for you.
The staffing ratio is high, so we can have intensive support available on site for those who need it. We find that not every resident needs it. Many people have a lease but do not need or access support. But if they do need it, it's there. We have PSW providers that work with our clients or tenants who have mobility issues, and then the housing providers as well. And that was part of the plan, to keep the ratio as high as it is to address the needs as needed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for clarifying. All right, so this is a question for Dennis Braun, and Dennis, I'm hoping you can introduce yourself when you answer the question as well. So Dennis, is the landscaping plan revised to now provide mature trees comparable to the size currently there?
Thanks, Liz, and hi, everyone. I'm Dennis Braun, manager at the city with part of the program that's reviewing these. I'll actually ask Kevin Hutchinson, the architect we've been working with, to jump on and answer design-related questions in more detail.
Thanks, Dennis. Yes, so there have been some revisions to the planting scheme. So there have been some revisions to save additional tree, for example, tree 40, which at one point was contemplated to be removed, is now being preserved. The tree planting has been revised in some areas, so we aren't able to provide totally mature 25-year-old trees in a day. Certainly, we're planting large, good, healthy trees and given the space to grow and to mature. But it won't be a one-for-one replacement. Some of those trees are older. We were replacing them with good, healthy, new trees.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. Hopefully that helps answer the question. Okay, Abby, this is a question for you. Can you please outline what harm reduction means?
Yes. Can you hear me? Oh yeah,
Yeah, we can hear
off mute. Okay, good. So yeah, harm reduction is really an approach for providing treatment for those who are using substances, which is non-judgmental. So people are engaging with their peers, with medical or social services in a non-judgmental way that enables them to be kind of met where they are. So it's a health kind of oriented approach. There's a lot of evidence to demonstrate that those people who engage in harm reduction services are more likely to then engage in ongoing treatment as a result of accessing services. And examples actually include things like if you were using a substance, using nicotine through smoking, that you're actually, if you wanted to give up smoking, that actually the use of nicotine patches is a harm reduction approach where you're not completely just giving up smoking, you're stepping down your use of that using nicotine patches. So it's a very effective way to help people with any substance use issues they're experiencing.
Okay, great. Jim, do you want to go back to the live questions?
I certainly can, because we have lots of hands up. We're about 7:15. We have 45 minutes left, so I remind you to be brief with your questions or comments, and then also with the panel to be brief. So next in the queue, we have James Scholl. James, I'm going to unmute you, and you can go ahead with your question or comment. Go ahead, James.
Hey there. No real question at all. Just to say I'm a pastor of a local church, Westmore Worship Centre. I also live in the area, have lived here for a number of years, and I want to say, yeah, we support this project. Our church is really excited by being able to reach out to people that may need a little extra help, but also have enough people with enough expertise in the church who know the complexities, but also know so much of the richness that can be brought from a wide diversity of people. And so just want to say that you guys have our support, and we'd love to partner more with you.
Thank you so much for that comment, James, and it's good to hear that we have support in the neighborhood. Next, we'll turn to Audrey Berend. Audrey, I'm going to unmute you, and you can go ahead with your question or comment.
So I would like to congratulate these people at the top of my screen who spoke so eloquently at the start of this meeting. I'm so proud to be part of this neighborhood where you're doing the right thing by people who so deserve it. I mean, what is the role of government if not to support, the people who never caught a break? And I'm seeing how you professionals are working, and I am thrilled. I want to sign up, Mr. Keegan, for volunteering and how I could support you more. I think that this idea that it's such a beautiful ground is such utter nonsense. I mean, whatever, it's going to be more beautiful after, and everyone can feel good that, they're making the world a better place. And my hat's off to you and John Fillion and everyone who's in support of this project. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for that. And I would just want to remind you that Kagan is at the other two sites and the operator has not been chosen for this site yet, but stay tuned, go to the website and sign up for information updates. And I'm sure once this residence is occupied later in 2021, there will be outreach to the communities through all the different avenues to make sure that this sort of thing happens. And once the operator is in place and the residents start moving in. So thank you, Audrey, for that. Next on questions, I have Rob in the queue. So Rob, I'm going to unmute you and you can go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you for letting me participate. I do agree that we should be helping those who are less fortunate. I think Torontonians have a moral imperative to share a responsibility to help our fellow citizens. I guess we can agree or disagree on the suitability of 175 Cummer. I've lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years and I tend to disagree that it's suitable, but I respect other people's opinions to the contrary. But one thing, and I think I speak for a number of people, is that if you want the support of people like me who are willing to see it from both points of view, we need to feel that this responsibility is being shared all across Toronto. And so as an example, is it safe to assume, is there a list out of proposed sites, for example, in some of the above average affluent neighborhoods like Rosedale, Forest Hill, Bridle Path, Hobbs Hollow, places where, I hate to be cynical, but I highly doubt you would see these kinds of things there. But if we did, you'd have my support because it would be hard to turn down support when it's being shared, the responsibility. So if that list exists, if you can direct me to it, I'd like to know where that is. That's my question, and thank you for listening. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Rob, for that question and comment. And Abby, are there a set of maps or on the website with the sites that have been selected so far and those to potentially be selected?
Yes, and thank you for asking that. So we did flash up a map during the presentation, but that map is available on our website, and that shows the supportive housing buildings that are currently under development. And there is actually one in Rosedale. It's not a modular housing building, but it is a building that we purchased using the same kind of funds that we received for this building. And it also will be a supportive housing building. So the operator for that building is St. Clair's, and it's a 250-ish apartment building that used to be a seniors residence that we have purchased and are renovating and in the process of tenanting with the very similar kind of people who will be in this building and with the same kind of supports offered on site. So we're really making efforts to ensure that there are choices across the whole city in many communities for people who are homeless in those communities or struggling with housing to be able to stay in their community. So we agree that it's important for this to be shared across the city, and hopefully you can see some of that information on our website, and we'll continue to update that as we bring new projects online and receive new funding, which, as I said, we recently have. So there'll be more supportive housing to come across the city. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Abby, for that. And yes, the maps are on the website, and certainly go to the website for modular housing and sign up for further updates as other sites are selected and across the city. We're going to go to Lisa M next. So Lisa, you are now unmuted. You can go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, thank you. I don't know where to start, but so the recent conversion of the Hydro One building into a shelter for the underhoused has provided the community with a bit of a crystal ball into what we might expect with the 175 Cummer project. I emphatically question the statistics mentioned earlier that there have been no adverse impacts as a result of some of the other modular houses that have gone up. Crime statistics only go as far as the number of reports into the police. And so I myself have personally stumbled across needles, people defecating on sidewalks, erratic gestures in my personal space. So my question is, what increased measures, if any, would be taken to ensure the safety of the settled community?
So I'm going to turn that over to Kagan. Kagan, how are you operating with that in your sites that you're operating now?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've created an open communication between the community as well as us as operators. And what we do is we provide individuals the opportunity, if there's a concern, they see something in the neighborhood, or there's something that's going on, they reach out to us, and then we take that information, and then we have a weekly operation meeting in which we discuss the issues and discuss how we can go forward with it. So essentially what we've done is created, like I said, created an open communication between the community and ourselves to ensure those issues and those concerns are funneled directly to us and we could address them right away. We do find that many of the issues that are brought forward aren't related to modular housing, but we work with our partners in the neighborhood and the community to regardless to help address those nevertheless.
Thank you, Kagan.
Jim, can I just briefly add that
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we see a distinction between shelters and housing as well. So there are the nature of the housing supports provided on site, the 24/7, the individual rooms, the privacy that people have, and the tenancy agreements that they have are somewhat different to the shelters. And we're really trying to pivot as much as possible from provision of shelters into housing. We feel that the outcomes are better for the individuals as well.
That's a good clarification. Thank you, Abby. Next, we're going to go to Nathan and President of BCNA Gnomes. Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic. Go ahead, Nathan, with your question or comment.
Hi, my name is Nathan Gomes. I'm the president of the Baby Cummer Neighborhood Association. The association is the primary association neighborhood group that is this modular housing is being placed in. Abby has attended our individual consultation in the past, so she is well aware that there is heavy community opposition to this particular project, particularly in our catchment around the modular housing area, which isn't a surprise. But at the same time, we initiated a Freedom of Information request for the federal government and obtained a list of the sites that Abby would not provide. And there's well over 180 on that particular site. Many of them are on hold. So given that there are so many sites on hold, and given that we know that these sites were approved well before consultations began, what measures are you going to take in terms of improving the site selection criteria, which we're aware of, and it doesn't contain any social criteria at all. In fact, many of them are being placed on right on top of school property, like the one in east of Etobicoke in the Premier's riding in the north of Etobicoke. So why aren't any social criteria being placed into these agreements, one? And two, in early March, we've heard from many church groups here. They're very supportive of it, but I'm aware that from your, I guess your deputations in March in front of the Housing Committee, that you said that you were developing partnerships with church groups to build housing on church property in different neighborhoods. I'd like to hear more about that, and is that consultation process open? Because we have a lot of church groups in our area. Some of them are united. We'd like to know, are you contemplating any other sites in our area in addition to this site? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nathan, and a number of questions there. So we'll turn it over to Abby first, and she can also have other staff from her team help with the answering if required. So go ahead, Abby.
Thank you. So I'm not sure what list that Nathan has from the federal government, so I can't really comment on the list that he has. Certainly the list of sites that we looked at that are owned or controlled by the City of Toronto. We went through an extensive review process that did include looking at social services and access to proximity of food and also transit as well. So we did look, that was included in our criteria, but I can't comment on the list that he has because I'm not familiar with that. I did just want to make I think you asked about our work generally to encourage organizations who have land like churches to bring those forward for the development of new, much needed affordable housing across the city. And we're really proud of the partnership and the MOU that we actually have with the United Church, which is over the next number of years to develop over 500 units of affordable housing. The United Church are going through the process themselves of identifying those sites and bringing them forward through a planning process through the city when that's appropriate. So those sites will be made public through a planning approval process when the United Church as the applicant is ready to bring those forward.
And his last question, are there any other sites in the Willowdale neighborhood at the present in the short term?
For supportive housing? Or,
yes, I think it was supportive housing, yeah.
Ones that we're not I think bringing forward supportive housing right now. Like I said, we're going through a process across the city to identify new sites for the new round of federal funding, but we have not yet agreed which sites we'll be putting in for that submission. So right now we have no new sites to announce, but we are going through a process across the city of looking for an additional 233 units to spend the $130 million that the federal government, new money that they've just announced and provided to us.
Great, thanks, Abby. And one more question from the those with hands up, and then we'll go back to Liz. I'm calling on Kathy Birch. So Kathy Birch, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my question. This is for Kevin and Abby. As you know, I went on site at Dovercourt, at the Dovercourt location to assess the accessibility of the modular builds as they sit. And I provided you with 9 pages of recommendations, some that are fairly minor and because I've not heard back from any of you, that gives me grave concern that these accessibility needs are not being met in this particular build and the ones going forward. Now, because this was already in the works, I understand that some things could not be implemented in this particular build, but maybe will at 7 Glamorgan and start moving forward. But I want to know where we stand on this build. Has anything changed? Have any of those recommendations been implemented? Because I'm pretty sure that the mayor was quite adamant that some of these things could be implemented very easily, and I want to know if it's happening, and if so, what.
So we'll start with Kevin. Kevin, can you advise Kathy, what's happened with some of the advice she's given you on different things, and primarily around accessibility, it sounds like. But you have the notes from her. So Kevin, what has changed, or what's going to change going forward?
So I think we've had a really useful round of comments specifically on the site plan elements, so related to parking, accessibility around the outside of the building. I think the notes you're referring to, Kathy, we have seen those. We are looking at them. It's a long and detailed process. We do have a pretty well developed model here, so adjustments can be made, and we are continuing to make refinements. I don't think I'm ready to give you an itemized list here about what those are. That's a bit of a longer exercise, but we are looking at it. We are giving it time. And I think we might have to report back to you on that one in terms of what specific changes have been made, but we have seen it. It's been shared with us. We've gone through it line by line.
Fantastic.
And maybe I can just make the commitment to Kathy that we too intend to do the follow-up with her and let her know, go through the document that you gave us, which, as Kevin said, was really helpful, and indicate what we're able to do on the ones in process and how we'll be changing the design moving forward. So thank you, Kathy, for providing that. We'll definitely do the follow-up with you.
And thank you, yeah, thank you for sure, Kathy, for making sure you provided lots of good comments, and that will be taken under serious advisement and looked at opportunities for improvement.
Can I just jump in and also in response to Dovercourt? I know our staff on site, when you came to tour the site, they were very pleased with the recommendations that were put forward, and I know that they have moved forward on some of the items that were easiest to implement, and we have plans to move forward on some of the items, so maybe we can connect and I could give you an update on how that's been going.
Yeah, let's do a connection offline after with Kathy to make sure you show how her advice has been moved forward on. I'm going to turn it back over to Liz. It's just after around 7:30 and we have about half an hour left. So if Liz has a few more questions in the typed Q&A, and then we'll come back to the hands up. So I'll turn it over to Liz for the next few questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. This is a question for Stephanie. Stephanie, when you answer, can you also introduce yourself? So this is a question from Dia, and Dia, I hope I got your name right. So the question is, why are the units not for families and only for singles? This does not seem to fit the demographic of the neighborhood. So Stephanie, I'm hoping you can start the answer to this question.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Stephanie Malka. I'm a manager at Shelter Support and Housing Administration. And so our division is responsible for the delivery of shelter and homelessness services across the city. You know, obviously there's a really broad range of people experiencing homelessness across our city and across Toronto. And you know, the vast majority of those folks are adults between the ages of 25 and 60. And so, you know, we do have a number of families, but really what we see when we look at the data across the homelessness system is that the vast majority of folks experiencing homelessness in Toronto are singles and are single adults, and that's why many of these units are dedicated to those folks. Abby, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add, but yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, Abby, this one's for you from Lily. If a tenant has problematic behavior due to mental health or addiction issues, what steps will management take?
Yes, thanks. So I think the primary aim is to keep people housed once people move in here, and we're definitely choosing or want to choose organizations like the Neighborhood Group and Cota Health, who have really, their staff have an amazing ability to work with people. They have a lot of experience and they can meet people where they're at. They can help them address their own mental health issues, help them get access to the services and support that they need, and work with them so that those health issues don't end up with them having to be evicted. So the aim is to keep people housed. I don't know, Keegan, if you want to add anything there about the great work that you're doing, but it's definitely a great approach to helping people and keeping them housed.
Yeah, and I'm sure Lynn could also jump in with some input as well, but we certainly take an approach of a holistic approach when it comes to supporting residents within our modular housing buildings. We sometimes take a restorative justice approach depending on the situation where, you know, it's about connecting with the landlord, connecting with their support services, connecting with the individual and building a plan to kind of curb some of those more problematic behaviors that may exist. It's also connecting with CODA and conducting case conferences with individuals. We've been finding a lot of success in using that model in curbing some of those behaviors. And again, it's just about giving people, like Abby said, people a chance to be housed, people a chance to be to keep their housing and to work with them as they navigate some of those challenges.
I guess just to add, every tenant is covered under the Rental Tenancy Act. So we do have options, but we do, as Kagan said, work towards that as a very last method. We want to keep people housed, and with Macy and Dovercourt, we've been very effective so far. And we look at what the behavior is, you know, what issues are underlying, and resolve issues there with the help of their support providers, both in-house and externally.
Great, thanks, Lynn, Kagan, and Abby. Abby, again, this one is for you from Mel. Can you speak a little bit more about the affordability for tenants?
Yeah, so really many of the people who are homeless will need access to rent subsidies, or they will be on ODSP, or they'll be receiving some kind of government assistance with a shelter allowance, a housing allowance as part of that. So this housing will be affordable to those people. They'll be able to put their housing allowance towards the rent. And then through the funding model, the city really with the support of the province will be providing rent subsidies to the nonprofit operator so that they will receive around 80% of area median rent for the unit, but the tenant themselves actually only pay what they can afford, usually their shelter or housing portion of their allowance. So it works really well as a model that the landlord receives the money that they need to operate the building effectively, and the tenant is able to pay what they can afford.
Okay, great. Thanks, Abby. Jim, do we want to go back to you?
Yes, let's go back to me. And I thank you for your patience for those with your hand up. And I think we'll go to the person on the phone who has a phone number. I won't read the whole thing. It's 647-524. So the person on the phone, I'm going to unmute you so you can go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, this is Amory. I have touch on things quickly, but there's no comparing this site to the other sites, given that it's much more massive and it is on the front lawn of a senior's residence and a long-term care home, which the others aren't. I'm also just wondering why no one on the east side, living on the east side of Bayview, right off of Cummer Avenue, have not been informed by mail about this proposed housing. There's a long-term care home along there, as well as many elderly people living in their own homes in the neighborhood. I'm also wondering how is this being funded? If it's being funded by the federal government and the government changes hands this September, where does the money continue to come from to fund this and to make sure it's successful? And what is the percentage of those residents right now that you're looking at who will require harm reduction as opposed to those not requiring it?
Okay, a series of 3 questions there. The first one about notification and the last one about harm reduction. So Abby, I'm going to start with you, but you can turn it to the rest of your team if you have others who can help with that. The notice is out to the area.
Sure. Well, I'll do my best to cover those 3 areas. So in terms of the notification for the development, so we worked with our planning colleagues to ensure that we were notifying, as we would any project that we're bringing forward, any development project in the area. So we adhered to all of the requirements and guidelines that planning advised us of. So we sent over almost 4,000 notices out telling people about the development. So that was one thing about the notification. In terms of the federal funding, so yes, we've received capital funding for this project from the federal government, and we've actually received that money already. So we have that, we've received it so that we're able to pay for the building and all of the materials and all of the design work that's necessary up front. Should for any reason the federal government changes its mind about wanting to fund this project, then we would have to work through the contractual obligations that we have with them at that time. But we've already received the capital money for the project. And then in relation to the last question on harm reduction, it's really a very individual, very thoughtful process, as you heard from Lynn and from Kagan, about how the support needs are really wrapped around the individual. So it's impossible to say what percentage of people will need harm reduction, because it varies and people don't need the same services all the time throughout their stay as well. So I can't really say what percentage, but harm reduction support will be available on site just for the residents who live in the building. So those kinds of services will not be provided generally for other people in the community. They really are focused on the needs of the residents themselves.
Great, thank you, Abby. We'll go to H. McNaughton next, and I'm going to unmute you, Mr. or Ms. McNaughton, and go ahead with your comment or question.
Thank you for, wait a minute. No.
Okay, Garrett, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can't hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Listening to thanks for having this meeting, even though it came at short notice and not very well informed on my computer to reach you. I have several comments to make about what we've already heard this evening, rather, from people. The purchase of a building. Why wasn't the hydro building on Yonge Street purchased under the same framework? Secondly, I have a written question, but I will articulate it. It's when is the MZO order expected? And
okay, well, let's stop there. Just not get too many questions in. So the first question was, we'll turn that over to Abby for the first question.
Yeah, thank you. So last fall, when we were invited by the federal government to bid for the Rapid Housing Initiative, we went through a process across the city of identifying properties for purchase as well as development. But prior to that, we'd also done an extensive search because we received previous money from the federal government from their innovation fund, and we were looking for sites that were appropriate for modular housing. So these sites were identified because they were suitable for modular housing, so the sites in this round. But as part of the Rapid Housing Initiative, we've been looking across the city for other types of buildings, other types of land, which we can either purchase and renovate into housing, or land that we can also build modular housing on. So we've looked, we've had brokers looking for us, we've had extensive searches looking for suitable properties to purchase, and then we've gone through a process of narrowing that down and then ultimately making our submission to the federal government, which is ultimately then approved by them before the funding is released to us.
what happened with Yonge Street?
Hydro building on Yonge Street?
I can't comment on specific real estate negotiations about why we would or wouldn't purchase a particular building, just to say that we have included the purchase of buildings. I've already mentioned the property in Rosedale, 877 Yonge, that we purchased, and we also purchased the Super 8 motel on Spadina, as well as a motel on Kingston Road. So we've had a mixture of both purchases, renovations, and also modular housing sites that we've been bringing forward.
So we're approaching 7:45. I just want to continue to provide you with the advice to provide brief comments or brief questions, the same with the responses. So far, so good. So we have about 15 minutes left. Let's get through as many other questions as we can. So next on my queue is Christina Martins. Christina, you're unmuted and you can go ahead with your question or comment.
So thank you very much, and thank you for having this meeting. And I'm actually just going to make a comment, so I will just be very brief. I'm speaking today as a resident who of the community who has had the opportunity to speak to many people in the community and many of my neighbors about this project since it was first announced. And nothing's really changed, like here tonight. Some oppose this project and some are in support of this project with very valid points on both sides. But as I have mentioned in the past, and I wanted to leave that here again tonight, that I am very I want to express that should this project go ahead, that we ensure that it is the best project and that there are the best benefits and best outcomes for the community, whether they be the current tenants at Willowdale Manor and or the future tenants of 175 Cummer Avenue. And I strongly believe that proposing that this particular site be used exclusively for seniors experiencing homelessness would be a real win-win for everyone and result in better outcomes for the future tenants and the community at large. I believe that a lot of the divisiveness and anxiety that has been experienced in my community recently, and especially the anxiety experienced by the seniors at Willowdale Manor, is valid, and that it would be lifted in knowing that their new neighbors will also be seniors. And it's my understanding that the city already provides many supportive programs and services to the seniors at Willowdale Manor, and that could easily be shared with the future tenants at 175 Cummer Avenue. So I guess my final comment would be that when an operator is being looked at to manage these homes, that the RFP, the request for proposal, include in there that the operator have extensive experience in assisting seniors experiencing homelessness. As I said, I think that this would all ease some of the anxiety, some of the divisiveness, and some of the vitriol that we're hearing in the community, and would really bring the best project to the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina, for those comments. I certainly want to remind you that we're taking notes. We're recording the meeting, so this video will be available afterwards, but we're also taking notes for a summary report from the comments and questions and feedback that we received tonight. So next on my queue, I have Natasha Manzuri. Natasha, I have unmuted you, and go ahead with your question or comment.
Good evening. You can hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to clarify that my personal approach about the buildings for this area for people in need is not negative. I have no issues with the people or the building or the plan. I think it's actually great that the city is trying to address this. It's long overdue. But what I do see is a disconnect in the city itself. So I'm going to say what my question is. There's a study plan for the Yonge Street North, and in this plan, which captures this area, the city is proposing to increase the green spaces because apparently we don't have enough. And at the same time, the same city is taking away the green space we already have. So to me, this doesn't make either any sense, or it means that some departments are not working together. I just don't know what the reason is, but I can't justify it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So if someone can explain to me why are we taking away even a small part of a green space while we're planning to take away some homes later on to create green space, I'll be grateful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Natasha, for that question. And we'll turn it over to Avi. Avi, you could also turn it over to others in your team if they have more specific information about the green space and planning.
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe one of my colleagues in planning can help with this question. I don't know, Matt, if you have any information about the proposals underway with regard to expansion of green space in the corridor.
And Matt, if you could introduce yourself before you start, that would be great.
Good evening. My name is Matt Armstrong. I'm a senior planner in strategic initiatives in city planning. The first thing I want to point out is this site is not a park. It's not a public green space. So that is a clear distinction between what the commenter is saying and the reality that's on the ground. The Yonge Street North study is being undertaken by colleagues of mine in North York. And I'm not aware, I don't work in parks, I don't know the details of the need for parks in that particular community. However, through that plan, I'm confident that a plan for growing green space meaning public green space, which this is not, will be a result.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Next, I just have to make sure I'm checking my queue. I don't want to miss folks. We have Franklin. Franklin, you have your hand up, and I'm going to unmute you. Franklin, go ahead with your question.
Unless they can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. The supportive housing strategy is a brilliant community approach to help the vulnerable group of Toronto residents. The information provided by the city also has been enormous, complete, and the consultation has been exhaustive. I can't see anything but well done to the City of Toronto for their work. I think 175 is an excellent location. It's close to bus, groceries, medical, coffee. I don't know how you could find a better location in the city. I'm surprised by the comments that were made earlier. I also really appreciate hearing the specifics of the staffing levels that have been that are going to be there, because I think that shows how committed the city is to make this project a success. My question is, one piece of information that's been put out there is that 80% of chronic homeless have severe mental health issues or addiction issues. I'm quoting a statement that was written. This is suggesting that 80% of the residents in 175 Cummer will also have that chronic homelessness and mental health and addiction issues. I understand chronic homelessness simply means people are continually homeless, not that they have these other issues. Can you speak to the accuracy of this comment, this piece of misinformation, I believe, and how this issue will really affect the Willowdale Manor residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Franklin, for that, and we'll turn that over to Abby, and she can turn it to others if required. But 80% mental health issues, I'm not sure where that quote was from, but I'm sure Abby can clarify that.
I'm actually going to let Stephanie talk to the makeup of our homeless population, but happy to follow up with any missing pieces of information about how we actually tenant the buildings. But over to Stephanie, I think.
Thanks, Abby. And yeah, thanks for the question. Again, I'm not sure where that information is coming from. I can let you know about the definition of chronic homelessness that we use. So you're right, the definition of chronic homelessness is about the length that someone experiences homelessness for. The definition that we use is the definition that's provided by the federal government. So someone would be experiencing homelessness either for 6 months out of the past 12 months or for 18 months out of the past 3 years. So the idea with that definition that is that it gives some flexibility for people who kind of might cycle in and out of homelessness over a longer period of time, but also accounts for people who might experience, 6 months of homelessness, all consecutive, and that they would be eligible as well. So that's the eligibility criteria that we're working with. As for the level of the number of people experiencing mental health issues, like certainly some people experiencing chronic homelessness are going to have mental health issues just like anyone across the whole population of anyone living in Toronto and in Canada and elsewhere. And so, that data point of 80%, again, I'm not sure exactly where it comes from. And, some people, and perhaps, I don't know, Len and Keegan can speak to this, certainly some tenants will have mental health issues, but those will be well supported by the provider who's on site and who's selected through the selection process.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that. And we'll move on to the next in the list. In my queue, we have Upama Rai. I've unmuted you. Upama, I'm sorry if I'm hopefully not doing your name a disservice there. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a Willowdale resident and homeowner, and I fully support the supportive housing project at 175 Cummer. I'd like to thank Matt Armstrong for clarifying this is not public parkland or green space. I'm at Willowdale Manor 2 to 3 times a week in my volunteer capacity, and I can attest to the fact that the front lawn was rarely used by the residents of Willowdale Manor until the opposers of this project convinced them to do so by spreading lies and fear-mongering. Until then, residents primarily use the back lawn. My question is, if Ontario gives in to the self-centered and misinformed NIMBY, how does Toronto propose to deal with the current 8,000, projected to increase to 18,000, homeless community? We cannot, as some opposers have suggested, ship them off to another city or put them in a ghetto. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that comment, Upama, and about the lawn. And yeah, the homeless. You're right. The statistics are roughly 8,000 homeless in the city, and of course, the city council has moved forward with supportive housing strategy. And maybe Abby, you would like to expand a little bit on that.
Yes, thank you. So we feel as a city that we've put forward a robust plan to deliver on supportive housing, not just the sites that you see before you today, like the one here at Cummer, but really a 24-month plan where we're trying to deliver at least 2,000 to 3,000 new units across the city. And we've been advocating strongly to the federal and provincial government to support us in that process. But that's part of a much larger plan to deliver 18,000 over the next 10 years. And even more to deliver 40,000 new affordable homes across the city. So this city is strongly, fully committed to the delivery of our housing TO plan. And really, we are working hard to get the support and the investment necessary to deliver on it from both the federal and provincial governments. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Abby. We're going to move to William Pham. William, I have unmuted you, and you can go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that my name is William, and I'm a student at Earl High Secondary School, probably one of the youngest people in this meeting. And I want to say that I'm very supportive of this project, and it's a great opportunity for Willowdale, and a great opportunity for just the fact that we have so much homeless people in Toronto, and there needs to be housing for them, or not the number will continue to grow, especially with the pandemic. And it's also very disheartening to see that my community fall apart over divisiveness and like misinformation, especially you can see it all over with lawn signs in my neighborhood. It's crazy. But I have a question that's just more speaking as youth, as young person in regards to the environment. What environmental like considerations are being made for this project? Like, for example, is there use of like sustainable materials when building this? Or for example, you know, what's like, is it insulation stuff or like, you know, better thermostats? Or like, what type of measures are being taken to ensure that, you know, what's being built is sustainable and not necessarily what has been done in the past, which has been very detrimental to our environment?
Thanks for that. Thanks for that question very much. It's good to hear that we have some young folks attending tonight and that you're asking questions about the greenness of this. So we'll turn it over to Kevin to talk about the sustainability aspects and that sort of thing that have been incorporated in this design and the project.
So thank you very much for the question. So the City of Toronto has an evolving target in terms of sustainability, and it's getting more and more stringent as we go along. In fact, we're better performing in this phase of modular than we were in the last. We've been improving our sustainability performance overall. In this case, we're meeting Toronto Green Standard Tier 2, which if you're not familiar with it, I suggest it would be interesting. It might be of interest to you. So there's energy targets and performance requirements there. There's minimum performance in terms of green roof that we must provide. And then there's also a bunch of other sustainability aspects that maybe are too lengthy to go into in detail, but there is a sustainability piece report submitted with this SPA that you can take a look at if you want more detail. Otherwise, I direct you to the Toronto Green Standards, but we are keenly aware of it and we're meeting Tier 2 Toronto Green Standards.
Thanks, Kevin, for that. And with that, we only have roughly a minute or so left. So I'm going to close down the questioning. Thank you all very much for the questions. And we're going to turn to the last slide so that we can just to advise you how you can stay connected with us. And if you didn't have your question answered tonight, you certainly can send your comments or question to the Community Liaison Office, which is run by my firm, Lura Consulting. Community Liaison at lura.ca. Send any comments or questions to that, and we'll sure to get back to you. And there is also a phone number for that, 647-758-8580. And I've taken some of those calls myself, and it's heartening to hear that we have a mixture of plus and four and different views of this. And we're taking all those comments down, and they'll all form part of the report of what we've heard from the community. So for more information on this and to sign up for the project list so that you can keep updated with what's happening as this moves forward, go to toronto.ca/175Cummer. That's the website for this project. There is the meeting videos from the first two meetings that were held earlier in March and April, and the video from this meeting tonight will be posted there shortly. There's also updates. There's an update notice there, and there'll be continued updates as we move forward into the next coming weeks as continue to sort of work on this supportive housing. So I want to thank both the panelists for your diligence in sticking around tonight for the questions and for the responses. And thanks to, we had over 120 attending at the peak. We're down to about 100 now, and people are signing off as we're about to say goodbye. So thank you to all from the community who came forward and provided a variety of views. And I want to thank you for being concise, constructive, and considerate. Thank you for following the ground rules. It makes for a much more productive meeting. And we're very happy to meet you all tonight and hear what you had to say. So thank you with that. With that, we'll adjourn this meeting and say goodnight and stay safe, please. Please stay safe out there. So long.